scheduled instant coffee, and we're trying out this new time again. After today's stream, probably not going to have many people watching on 24th, 25th, so might be a little vacation from Alan's stream, but that's all good. More and more content for all you all. Oh, whoops, my microphone wasn't here. Okay, let us get started. Hi Viata, hi Ksa, hi other people that are rolling in. Thank you all for your feedback about how to get live stream viewing. It seems that this sort of time, 8 a.m., 8:30 Pacific Standard Time, and then just throw in a couple links or reminders in some places, and that is much better than the generic way of betting on YouTube or some other only one service to give those pings. So useful info here. Ksa says math and feds. What a title. Yes, what a title indeed. So I'll just pull up an MS Paint window and we can talk about today's topic using that. So let me okay. So today's topic is computer-mediated communication. Now, computer-mediated communication, this is kind of an academic term. Most people wouldn't talk about email or text messages or all these things as computer-mediated communication. But I think that the idea is quite simple. So let us just draw some pictures. Okay, I messed up using MS Paint. Computer-mediated communication. Alright. Where's my brush tool? Why did they make MS Paint? Look, MS Paint has tabs here. It's become more complicated than in the past. And then a brush here. Okay. So here we got one person. And then we have another person here. So normally when people talk, then we'll just say this is like face-to-face normal communication. Right? Face-to-face normal communication. Now, where do feds and math come in? So let's draw a scary black monolith. Oh no, we want to draw a rectangle. So how do we represent feds? Maybe we could have some sunglasses. We'll do some on-stream artwork here. Okay. Then we get our bucket. Let's get our brush again. Okay, so here are the feds. Let's give them a fed hat. And then let's add some math. So this will be a lot of, we're going to make some binary. You guys ready? Okay. So as opposed to just normal face-to-face communication, we have fed and math mediated communication. I'm going to save that image. That might come in handy somewhere else. Math and fed mediated communication. Okay. So this general idea has been in the works for a long time, as opposed to just people communicating directly. And this could also include, for example, handing off a piece of paper, a letter between two people, all of that. Crucially, there's only two parties involved. But in the modern digital world, we have this third party involved, the the Fed party, I'll call it, and this sort of communication is called secure, or they will promise you privacy. Why is that? It's because they're going to use a bunch of math and cryptography here to say, oh yeah, we're ensuring that your message only is between you and the person you're talking to. But what isn't emphasized, but is just a fact about how these systems work, is that, yeah, there's a guaranteed channel here with mathy encryption, but then you have this Snoopy guy in the middle. So I've been looking a little bit at this book, the Code Book, which talks about codes and ciphers and all that. And I've also been studying languages and communication generally for a long time. So this is some cutting edge research here to describe the basic situation of what is being developed. So let's leave that up. How am I going to do this? Do something clever. I know what to do. Well, this is okay. We'll just go with this. So let's skip and look at our words of the day for today. So first I had the Latin word from which the word communication comes. That is commūnicātiō, meaning sharing, imparting, partaking, fellowship. So nothing surprising there. Just looking at this word, when we're talking about communication, then computer-mediated communication means that the Fed, the spooky boys, are joining in into sharing the partaking. So while you might just want a moment between like you and your friends or your family, computer-mediated communication means that these guys, these uninvited third parties, are inserting themselves. All right, and then the Greek word I have here is dynamīs. And this word is where we get the word in English dynamic from, dynamo. Dynamic is probably the most common word with this root that I could think of. Anyways, it means power, might, strength, ability, skill, power, authority. So all these sorts of things, but also magic, magically potent substance or object, or magic powers, manifestation of divine power, miracles, faculty, capacity, worth. And then in math, we also use the word power, and I guess this dynamīs word has also been used historically in Greek to talk about square roots and powers as an exponents in math. So if anybody is more aware about how this word power, like what is the connection to call a certain sort of function a power in math? Like I know how powers work in the sense of, what 2 to the third power is 8, right? I think that is pretty common knowledge. But why do we call it a power? If somebody has some insight into that, please share. Anyways, this word dynamīs, among other reasons I thought it was interesting and I was looking at this, is because there's something called the dynamic web that we could talk more about. The dynamic web, or the dynamic internet, which has to do with like this person, they enter in some data and then this person accesses it, and the computer-mediated communication, there's some sort of update of information within this sphere, the computer server sphere. And that's what makes communication dynamic, or web content dynamic, as opposed to just these people sharing a single piece of paper between them. The dynamic internet is having web pages or something, servers that could be updated on this computer side. So who is being empowered by dynamic web? Is it you? Is it your friends? Or is it the third party that is getting more powers, more magics from the development of the dynamic internet. Okay, so computer-mediated communication. Got my picture here. Let's turn and look specifically at the current cutting edge of computer-mediated communication. So I'm going to bring up a video. This is from NVIDIA, and I found it to be quite technologically impressive. I've used like Zoom, software like that, and for the most part, it's been normal, like functioning as advertised. I've lost some money on Zoom stock too. I thought they were a solid, dependable service, but apparently that's not good enough for a growth stock. So let's see where the growth is happening. Why is it not just good enough that Zoom works, but what sort of growth are they going for? What sort of world is being made?
NVIDIA Maxing is a remarkable innovation.
Okay, so we're looking at this NVIDIA Maxine, and I just want to point out, okay, symbol coincidence detectors here. Why would you open this video cutting off one of her eyes? And furthermore, let us look at NVIDIA's logo really quick. And let us also look at Wiktionary, and let us look up the word NVIDIA. Okay, and let us also read your comments. So Viata says, according to Wikipedia, the term power, Latin potentia, potestas, dignitas, is a mistranslation of the ancient Greek dynamīs. So that was the dynamīs power word that we were looking at. So the Latin, if we say from power, that's saying it goes back to dynamīs. I'm wondering how the dynamīs got associated with the squaring stuff to begin with. Zaw says, fuck! YouTube didn't start playing, and I thought you were late till I refreshed 9 minutes later. Well, welcome back, Saw. It looks like our computer-mediated communication is not functioning so smoothly. So you had to hit the Fed box with the F5, mash that refresh button, and now everything is running more smoothly. So welcome back. Okay, so we're looking at NVIDIA. So first frame, just notice, open it up. Why is this good style? You know, I'm just Alan in my little thumbnail in the bottom right hand corner, but do I just cut off one of my eyes in a kind of spooky way? Why are they doing that? So I wanted to bring attention first to the name of NVIDIA. It sounds very similar to a Latin word here, invidia, which means envious or envy or grudge. And this invidia is also associated with what one might call the evil eye. So let us actually go on Google and we'll search invidia and see what comes up, this Latin word, and see what sort of associations there are. Because we are scholars here. So images. Alright, so it looks like there's some kind of part. I'm just going to add the word I. Okay, so I searched NVIDIA, then they're putting up the NVIDIA. Oh, here we have a serpent. What does this site claim about the origins of it? Okay, we got a fun one for you today, folks. We're going to be talking about how NVIDIA got its name and its fascinating history in Roman mythology. In Latin, NVIDIA is a sense of envy, an intense gaze associated with malice and the evil eye. And this is from Khalid Moamer of a tech site. And this person, they're not just like bashing on and hating on NVIDIA. As you could see, they have all these articles and stuff actually promoting and talking about various products, NVIDIA, Intel, AMD, and so on and so forth. So this is not like just a spooky esoteric symbolism site that we're looking at. This is somebody
that's probably working with, and maybe might even call him like a fan of these things. So let's take a look at this. NVIDIA is also the Roman name for the ancient Greek Titan deity Nemesis, who's the personification of hatred and jealousy in Roman mythology. Then we have a quote from Ovid about NVIDIA in the Metamorphoses. Her face was sickly pale, her whole body lean and wasted, and she squinted horribly. Her teeth were discolored and decayed, her poisonous breasts of a greenish hue, so notice the NVIDIA green color too, and her tongue dripped venom, gnawing at others and being gnawed. She was herself her own torment. She's pitied by Roman deities, seen as a hideous and spiteful being, seeking to poison all creation with the taint of hate, punishing those reveling in their own self-admiration, and taking away wealth and fortune from those deemed undeserving. She's often portrayed in the color green, which is closely associated with envy. In magic folklore, envy, or the evil eye, is a principal vice that motivates demons. It's also what drives the biting eye of witches who would cast their spells with poisonous tongues. It was a deeply held belief by the ancient Greeks and Romans that envy originates from the eyes. And so NVIDIA's logo, of course, you got the green going, and you have an eye with a spiral-looking thing. The company's name, NVIDIA, pronounced Nvidia, was carefully chosen because of its nuanced meanings, which are tied to vision and envy, in addition to the way it sounds being quite similar to video because of the root vidia. The company has long loved to employ wordplay and symbolism, including in its marketing. Envy and vision are very closely connected in mythology. They, in fact, always shared the symbol of an eye. All of that plays into NVIDIA's green theme and logo. The slogan for the GeForce 8 series was in fact, green with envy. The company's high-end offerings are also brand Titans. So, not making stuff up here. This is all open information. Again, playing into the mythological background of it all. A name from ancient mythology with deep connections to the concept of vision is quite fitting for a graphics company which aspires to create unparalleled visual experiences that would be the envy of everyone to behold. And then we have a NVIDIA and serpent form, and let us refer back to this site. What was it? Ghidra. I think I spelled it wrong with the H. Ghidra reverse engineering. Yeah, so the NSA Ghidra framework. Oh, let us go to this one. Yeah, where you can see the serpent with the Ouroboros, the snake that's devouring its own tail. So this is the NSA reverse engineering tool Ghidra. And then likewise we could see NVIDIA. They have an association with the serpent. And the serpent is also associated with the evil eye and envy, which is why it's green and why there's an eye. Reaper says hi. What's up, Reaper? Welcome to corporate logo analysis time. All right, and then in modern day Tunisia, we have a depiction of NVIDIA, and then some European depictions. Jacques Collot. Here you see the kind of intense looking eye action, some green color. Tirce invidiosa. Circle, abounding in envy. Some more magic kind of witchcraft associations. Anyways, that's to say that all over tech logos, for whatever reasons, we see a lot of spooky associations. And NVIDIA is no exception. And I didn't notice this at first, but just looking at how this little NVIDIA promo starts, we have this woman covering her one eye. And let us just look at kind of evil eye depictions. Could look at Wikipedia. So there's a lot of charms to ward away the evil eye. But another association is the Eye of Horus. So here you could look at the Eye of Horus, and then what do you have here? It's kind of flashing a allusion, one might say, to the Eye of Horus, in his eyebrow. And I'm not gonna do an audit of her fashion and stuff, but I'll leave it up to the audience to say if they're trying to suggest some kind of envy action going on here. But even just looking at a tech site that just gave us a esoteric analysis of NVIDIA, so that was quite interesting to find. I did not prepare that before the show. All right. Reaper says the actual NVIDIA logo is very in line with 1995-2005 gaming 3D company logos. Yeah, so maybe we could look at some other early, I'll call them early internet gaming 3D company logos. So I'm not claiming that NVIDIA's logo is distinct in this regard. If we look at more companies' logos, then we'll probably find lots of other spooky stuff. Like I've just mentioning logos, like in past streams I brought up Blender's logo. And Blender's logo both seems to channel like the eye motif and also the 666s interlaid on top of each other for the Blender logo. So coincidences, a spooky design team all getting together and talking about stuff, a kind of inevitability. I don't know how to explain it. We're just pattern noticing here. So pattern noticing about NVIDIA. And here I think that this video cut for such a major kind of press release from their official channel, I don't think that it is just a coincidence. We're not coincidence theorists here. I think they wanted to do this for a reason. So let's continue to look at this NVIDIA video.
One built to advance how we collaborate in this brand new online world of ours. With Maxing, you can speak several languages.
Okay, so then this is some pretty advanced technology. You could see this person is going to be simultaneously speaking all these different languages and using machine translation technology. Then you get the instant translation ability. So once again, let's look at my diagram here of computer mediated communication. So you have the Fed box here, the Feds and the math, and then you have two people. So instead of two people just speaking face to face, then you could transform, you could change the communication in various ways using the computer media communication Fed box. So here we can see how the Fed box, one thing it could do is kind of reverse the Tower of Babel scrambling of languages. The Fed box is a rebuilding of the Tower of Babel, reuniting people speaking the same language because they could do it mediated through this thing. Okay. Reaper says, so something that you should look at is logos and symbols books for designers. There are tons of books that designers will have on their bookshelves that they flip through when designing a logo. So the point being, the actual pattern of designers is they look at cool stuff, then combine them together to make new cool stuff. So Reaper, what I'm suggesting is it's not just coincidental cool stuff. There's patterns and there's connections about why certain stuff gets passed down as a pattern and why it's cool. Okay, Viata says spooky things. Well, 3DFX used to have some GPUs called Voodoo. Yeah, so this is another thing too, not just the logos and the symbols, but also look at the names of the product lines. So with NVIDIA, for instance, they were mentioning a line of products called Titan, showing that the connections between NVIDIA and then this Latin word NVIDIA, the evil eye, all this stuff, it's not just coincidental. It's a thing that they're memeing with, that they're rolling and going along with. And I would say we could expect, future products to continue in these patterns. So we're just noticing them, just pattern noticing. We're reading the signs. So let's look at how this Maxine tech works.
Alles auf einmal.
Alles auf einmal.
Y en tiempo real.
Y en tiempo réel. We could practice our
Et
languages.
avec la nuance.
Nuance, bro. Avec la nuance.
Et en tiempo real. Et avec la nuance.
与大家更好的分享你的想。
Wait, did I just see the Chinese font being messed
Et
up?
avec la
Okay, I just got to point this out. One thing that's continually kind of funny to me, even as the tech gets more and more and more advanced, you could see here, even in this professional release where there's, NVIDIA, a lot of Chinese people working for this company and stuff, they can't even get their Chinese fonts right. It's funny. So, you build this super advanced technology where, you have this cube and you could do all these calculations. But then you have, this is like the Chinese equivalent of the sans serif, and then the Chinese equivalent of the serif, one being more brush looking, one being more block looking. But even on here, where they're displaying the text, they couldn't get their language tags and stuff set up right. So the fonts here with these particular characters looks like complete garbage. This happens, by the way, on Facebook and all sorts of places. They treat like Chinese, Japanese, Korean display of Chinese characters, they treat them all the same. So depending on how your fonts are set up, then you might get really crappy looking characters like this, as it tries to pick the correct character and display it correctly, and the defaults, if they're not set up properly, they just look bad. So just know you're in this world where we have state-of-the-art translation technology, but then on a professional release for a video, the Chinese fonts still look like garbage. So let's finish looking at this video.
nuance.
与大家更好的分享你的想法。Eye contact is critical to engaging your audience.
Okay, so now this segment's on eye contact, which is also interesting, talking about the NVIDIA logo, evil eye, all of this stuff. So let's look at how the technology works with eye contact stuff.
Maxine keeps my eyes on you even when they're looking down at the script or when I'm feeling a little nervous. Because you're actually not looking at me, but rather a portrait that Maxine brings to life. From a single photo of me, from a cafe that filled with noise that would normally drown me out.
Okay, so here we have the computer mediated communication. Even if this person is looking at all sorts of different things, reading a script off their desk, then the computer could simulate that the person's looking straight at the camera. And this is supposed to help experiences, help engagement, basically by deception. So even if someone isn't really paying attention, they're distracted, they're looking all around, using this black box, you could pretend that you're focused and looking at the person that you're talking to. So interesting thing that lots and lots of money is going into. Let's keep on looking.
Like this.
Okay, so she could use magic to block out all the noise, and she's holding up a sign that says, "That's the magic of Maxine." All right. So, I thought that was a pretty interesting video.
And welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to look at
Oh, look at that logo graphic thingy too here. It's kind of like an Ouroboros too. Or 6. Could they not help themselves? What's going on? Okay, let us continue to look at this. So I found that this video, this sort of state of the art of computer mediated communication, give NVIDIA credit in saying that they have developed some really advanced, impressive technology, at least from that video demo, minus the Chinese font issue. I would say it was quite impressive technically. Okay, Reaper says, so NVIDIA could take this stream and then make a new one with the same looking Alan, except have him say pro-establishment things. That's right. Yeah, this is the idea too of the deep fake. So we could even look at NVIDIA deep fake and see what they have to say about that. Reaper also says, I like that holding up a card makes it real, as if a game could not show that. Yeah, the whole idea too of like holding up a card, it's very interesting. You could just think of various sort of proofs by video. That's another interesting topic to maybe look at later, which is like, oh, if I could do this particular thing on a video, then it must mean that it's real. Yet we know that there's a kind of arms race of being able to do more and more fancy things on video. Okay, so yeah, so related to what Reaper said here, so NVIDIA could take this stream and then make a new one with the exact same looking Alan, except having, say, pro-establishment things. Let's look at how NVIDIA has shown their deepfake technology with their CEO, Jensen Huang.
At this past GTC, our creative team created the holodeck to create a virtual kitchen for the keynote. That keynote was seen over 20 million times. And this was a collaboration between 50 NVIDIANs across research, engineering, product groups, and creative teams. They used Omniverse Create and Omniverse View.
So this Omniverse thing too, that's the Maxine fell between there. Let's just skip to the video. So is this Jensen Huang? So matrix of cameras all around.
Amazing increase in system and memory bandwidth, the basic building block of the modern data center.
So you can see they're simulating his whole surroundings. So just as a note, like when you make like a full 3D model of this, then one of the advantages of that is then, for example, let's say you want to show some magic powers of being able to make stuff hover and stuff. Well, if you have all the models and stuff, you could use software to do ray tracing to make all the shadows and the reflections very convincing.
What I'm about to show you.
Let's watch that warp in one more time. Alright guys, are you ready for some Roblox? Here we go.
What I'm about to show you brings together the latest GPU accelerated computing. Today, we're introducing a new kind of computer. Come along.
So graphically, this guy has acquired superpowers, basically.
Come along.
Whoa. Okay. Viata says, deepfake is the most scariest shiz, man. Soon the people in power can release recordings of you killing someone anywhere in the world, even in countries you never went. Scary. Yeah, and I think that, so oftentimes the way that this stuff is developed and seen would be through like fun stuff. So if I search like deep fake dance, now why dance? Well, one thing that's happening with dancing is a lot of movement. So if you could get somebody to successfully do some kind of dance thing and then show how you could paste someone's face on it, then who's to say you can't show them like running around with a butcher axe or something? So we could look at our friends at The Verge. We could look at Trump doing the Chica dance. Alright, trigger warning, weeb cringe. So you could notice like on the feet, there's still a lot of flickering, kind of sliding around. And like when he turned around, his tie was misplaced. So they didn't have everything correct yet, but you could see how this technology is being actively developed. And here, so with the original animation, one technique that people could use as well, and something to watch out. So if you want to like determine is something a deep fake, then know that there's certain problems that are hard. So for example, getting the feet on the floor to work properly, that's very difficult to do. So if you see a video that's supposedly somebody, and then they aren't showing the ground and they aren't showing the feet, then that's like one indicator that perhaps it's a deep fake, or perhaps they're trying to skirt or get around a particular problem. So watch his feet. You see how the feet doesn't fit well. But if so I'm going to cover his feet. So when I cover his feet, it looks a lot more convincing. Then I take this away, you see his feet kind of tripping and sliding all over the place. Doesn't look natural. More natural. And I'll note too that in Facebook Metaverse, one question people were asking was, why is everybody a floating torso? And this is also related to that feet tracking thing I was talking about. So to make these avatars track and look real, it's easier if you just bypass the problem of having to worry about the feet doing their thing realistically. So if you just have people as floating torsos, it's basically saying we'll solve that later. So if this is good enough to have a particular meeting, then that's all fine and good. And likewise too, if you have people that are actually floating and stuff, so you do the feet, but they don't have to properly track along the ground, then that's another sort of workaround to avoid the spell being broken, the illusion being broken by the glitch. Yeah, so you can see that people are sitting in chairs even though they don't have butts, because Facebook is working, or Meta is working on all sorts of technology that isn't the feet tracking for this particular Horizon demonstration. Okay, another demo video. Everybody dance now. Motion retargeting video subjects. So a bunch of people at Berkeley made this. Let's see what they're looking at. Okay, so they have some people that are dancing, and then you could see that from the source video they could construct a skeleton, and then basically it's like a puppet. So they record all these movements, and then with the result, then they can map the puppet to the detected pose from the source recording. So source video is this guy doing all these dance moves, and then they're able to make one of their Berkeley people doing all that stuff. So now anybody could do all sorts of dances. So you could watch awkward Asian nerds at Berkeley do dance moves. We don't need the technology. We could do these moves. We could do them. But I think we have better things to do. So we don't need to focus on this. Anyways, that's to say, here's some of the stuff that's happening. And going back to the main sort of topic of this particular stream. So the computer mediated communication is not just you talking to another person, but you have this function here, this black box, which could transform the base input you have. And what are the reasons going to be that people will accept this? Well, one of them might be out of like vanity or envy, for instance. So saying, oh yeah, well, if I don't use this thing, then people might think that I look aged. So this thing is my very fancy black box of makeup. or this thing, I can't dance or play guitar or whatever, but using this technology, then suddenly I could project that ability for myself. So the technology is actively being developed, and as you could see with the Maxine example especially, it's already quite advanced, that is allowing people to have these powers. Now, these powers only work within these platforms, within the digital world, right? If there's a video of you dancing but you can't dance, then of course that doesn't mean that you could dance, but you could create a video of you dancing. So insofar as video counts as sufficient evidence that you actually did the thing and people will believe you, like let's say with a legal example, a court admits video evidence. Well, as the deep fakes and stuff get super powerful, then this is a very powerful tool to falsely accuse people, for instance. All right. So I just had a couple notes here. First question, how much technology do you need? So looking back at the computer mediated communication here, this is implying, this is currently what's being built. But practically speaking, a lot of the demands we actually have for doing like commerce benefiting from the internet, it's already solved. So we have email, we have messaging apps, and so on and so forth. So if we want a world where you could order things on the internet, you could communicate with people around the world, all of these problems are effectively solved. We don't have to do any more. Yet more and more stuff is being developed. So what sort of stuff is being developed, and for what purposes, and what form will it take? That's why we have like news analysis on this stream, to look at those directions. But this is to say that, like, practically speaking, I'm not going like, YouTube, give me more features or whatever, because actually the YouTube technology that I'm using right now and the OBS software, all this stuff, it works quite well. I'm not actually asking for more features. This, by the way, is one of the reasons why like I've been demotivated multiple times in my like learning of technology, web programming stuff, because I'll realize like actually the technology I have solves all the problems that I want. It's just a matter of being organized and contacting people and stuff, but I don't actually really need more technology. So I used to be more of a technology enthusiast. Now I don't really care as much, except for to analyze it like we're doing now. So to understand the nature of the technology, such that you could know what it can and can't do, what is actually useful, what's a preferred method to do something. So like I'm embracing YouTube streaming. What's one of the reasons to do it? Well, in terms of just actually consistently being able to reach a bunch of people, to have a YouTube channel, a YouTube video, something like that, it will embed nicely and do all sorts of things that if you try to cook up like a custom blog or something, the YouTube data that you're able to convey, the YouTube information you're able to use is much richer. So YouTube's got all sorts of policy government problems, but in terms of the actual product and the actual delivery, I'm not going to start trying to figure out how to do my own video hosting today. I don't want to pay for that bandwidth, among other things. But YouTube also, they do a good job, so that's why I'm using YouTube. Right, continuing. So we could look at the history of various forms of communication with technology. So not so much computer-mediated communication specifically, but technology, language technology mediated communication. You could consider writing generally to be a form of language technology. Writing as language technology because normally you speak, and then once you're done speaking, the speech is lost, dispersed in the sound waves in the air, whatever you want to call it. But with writing, you could write, and then the words, they don't just dissipate. The words could stay there. There's more permanence to it. So in that way, I'm saying writing as a kind of language technology. So throughout history, we could see, this is not a perfectly linear. Of course, the history of this is much more complex, but a general summary here. So after handwriting, and handwriting might be very personal, people would do forensics and stuff, figure out who wrote something based on looking at characteristics of handwriting style, just like we might recognize somebody's voice. In a society where everybody is doing handwriting, you might also recognize people's handwriting and then use that as a means to determine who did what. Maybe you still do this sometimes today. Like you see a handwritten grocery list, and then you're like, oh yeah, I know, my mom wrote that list. Or, oh yeah, that, my brother wrote that list. And you would know because of the handwriting. So still, even in this century, the handwriting analysis stuff can be relevant, though less and less so as things have become mechanized. So one of the first transformations after handwriting is mechanical type, such as with a typewriter, and it takes away more of the personal feel of handwriting because now it's machine mediated. The machine is producing the actual letters as opposed to you with your hand. That's why it's not, handwriting. The next step after that is digital hypertext. So even typewriters themselves, they are all uniquely made machines. So you could do forensics and figure out, oh yeah, this document came from this typewriter or this printing press, and this other one came from this other one. So you could say like, oh yeah, if we zoom in with the microscope, there's like a little, notch on the letter I or, whatever. Just by the nature of physical stuff, different typewriters will be different. And well, you could even say this about like actual printers. So if you actually go ahead and print a document, no two printers are exactly the same, though they'll be, very similar. Okay, so after typewriters, then we have digital hypertext. And digital hypertext, so reducing everything down to digital 0, 1, we won't get into all the specifics of the encoding stuff, but basically this means all that what you could call accidental differences between different typewriters that is essentially eliminated insofar as the source document is just a stream of zeros and ones. It's just information. Okay, so then beyond that, we got hypertext here. Then we started to have more secure systems. So it wouldn't just be hypertext that anybody could read. Soon thereafter, people started to develop various methods of encryption. And that's what I'm looking at, for example, in this book, the code book. Encryption is a way to hide or obscure the messages that might be in plain text. So all of this, I'm writing and doing everything I'm doing here just in plain text. And I'm also making, a public YouTube video. So it doesn't matter to me. But if you're, politician, military, who knows what, then the ability to send secret messages where you want to guarantee that it's only you and the party that you're sending it to are getting the information, that became very important. So looking at my diagram here of the computer mediated communication, so let's say you have a politician and a Fed. They would want the Fed box to, scramble the letters, make it so, this channel secure, then beepity bloopity bloopity blop, and then make that this is also secure and send it here. But crucially, just know, because it's computer mediated, then you always have this third party that's in between by the nature of the setup. And nowadays you might even add in like another layer here, try to add in more layers. But when you're adding these more different layers to transfer your message, right, you're introducing more and more third parties to your communication. And the security, the privacy, it's only secure and private insofar as you trust this system. So while, you might have really powerful algorithms or whatever, such that these channels are secure, these orange lines of my diagram, what's to say that in this place, they don't have your messages as well as all the keys and stuff necessary to decrypt. Okay. And next here, I said the dynamic internet. So dynamic, given a throwback to this word, dynamīs, the power of might or strength. They're also the magical powers that we're talking about. Dynamic internet, which includes cloud computing, means a third party, the digital service provider, such as Gmail, who provides an email service, mediates communication between you and the people you are contacting. Encryption technology is used to make sure that your messages only go to the central service provider and the people you're sending messages to. So practically, like in my life, for instance, I will use like Gmail, right? Because it's the de facto standard if you're in the United States. But I know that I'm using this container, so I send a message and then Gmail is in charge of sending it to somebody else. And these things are very complicated to set up yourself, so I'm not going to try to make my own email server. But a price I have to pay for using the convenience of Gmail is to bring the G-man. Use Gmail, you bring the G-man into the picture, just by definition. So a politician, they might want to try to have their own private email server or something in order to not have particular G-men looking at their stuff. All those security concerns is having to deal with who are the third parties involved. Can I trust them? And if I cannot trust them, what workarounds are there? And so now that I mentioned Gmail, I'll just make a note about like the post office, normal mail. One reason why somebody might trust the normal post office as opposed to Gmail to send a message securely between them and a party is to say, like, I'm assuming that Gmail has access to, and they could undetected, like, open all my messages, change them, modify them, whatever. But then somebody might be able to say, but through the physical medium of the post office, on the other hand, it would be more obvious if the envelope was open, tampered with, and so on and so forth. And you're not relying on giving a third party some sort of key and encryption. So if you wanted to go like old school cipher, right, you could actually hand write a letter with ciphers, give your friend the key to decode your message, and then send whatever you want, like through the post office, and then like only pay attention to the messages that appear that they aren't tampered with through your expert forensic analysis. And through that way, which would be slower and less convenient than this computer mediated communication way, you could orchestrate empires or whatever it is that you would want to do in secret. But that's to say, nowadays, a lot of talk about security and privacy and stuff, but just step back, objectively look at what is the nature, the technologies, and the parties involved in any setup, and ask yourself if you're willing, comfortable, whatever, wanting to use those services. And if you don't, then don't kid yourself about having more privacy or security than you actually do. Reaper says, there was never a deep expectation of privacy in human communities. Yeah, so personally, like I said, I'm going public here on YouTube, showing plain text and all this. So I'm not a person that freaks out and talks about privacy and stuff a lot. But clearly it's big business, and a lot of people do care about that sort of thing. And especially in the software world, you're going to get a lot of people who talk about like internet privacy as a kind of right. And I'm like, me being public here, I'm just saying, like, I don't think that that's the case. And also, it always has kind of been that way, where the sort of encrypted message security stuff, that has always been like an exceptional work, an extra step, a difficult thing to do. Reaper says, in fact, one would expect more or less the opposite expectation for a tribe, small village, etc. Right. So like within a small village, of course, if you aren't using text as in writing, then people could overhear things, right? So the difference, though, between a system like that would be well, we could say like it's simpler and easier to understand. So what would spying on somebody look like in a small village? You know, two people are talking and then somebody's like putting their ear to the door. Something like that. How would information get leaked? Well, somebody, it's supposed to be private, and then somebody would break the trust of the group and they would go out and they would say stuff. So what we're seeing here now is that rather than having people and personal relationships, things like that being the nature of how secure or not secure is something. So how well do you trust people, and then also non-technological ways to secure your surroundings or whatever. Instead of that, why I'm calling all this computer-mediated communication, using this academic term, is that through the medium of computers itself, the computers take away that physical space arrangement, and they open the door to have all sorts of third parties as potential people that are listening in a different way than if we're just talking about a small village or a tribe. Okay, Reaper says, so the privacy thing is important, but the reality is on the internet, the more important thing is you don't want to get hacked or phished by bad actors. I'm pretty sure the engineers of the 70s, 80s internet specifically said no to more security. Yeah, so good transition here, Reaper. Let's see. Yeah, so looking at this computer-mediated communication model. So what security and privacy means, not getting hacked, it basically means you don't want this box to get smashed open. So let's make a bad guy. Let's see, what color haven't I used? Okay. Oh, I need a brush. So here's like third party bad guy. Here's attacker, and we'll give him. He could have a sword. So here's the attacker. You don't want the attacker to be able to smash in this and to, assuming in this box they have the keys and stuff to decrypt this. You don't want this attacker guy to be able to intercept the message that's going between these people. So the privacy security stuff is saying the privacy and security of the box. We have the mathemagics that tells us that, you know, this thing, if you intercept this using, you know, some Fed tool like Wireshark, you use some packet sniffing technology. If you intercept this stuff, if they're using encryption, okay, you're not going to be able to unscramble it, you know, unless you have some, you know, mystical quantum computer or whatever. I won't get into that. So these orange channels here, let's just assume that they're mathematically secure. So the nature of the attack would be, you know, somebody like this literally breaks into the server room and they find a nerd that's logged into the system. And they're like, you know, stand away from the keyboard. And that is actually how like a security breach might happen. Let's see what Reaper said. Right. So where are the security vulnerabilities? Oftentimes it won't be what's the orange in this diagram, but it could be like this person's on their computer and then someone's looking over their shoulder and they see the secret message that they're sending. So it's not on the feds and the computer mediated communication. It's not a failure of the orange lines or the black box here, but rather it was this person's own OPSEC that failed, and that is how they got hacked. So these hacker people, you know, they'll talk about like social engineering. What's the term that they use? Social hacking or something. Let's look at this term. Yeah, well, social engineering in the sense of information security is oftentimes how, as Reaper was giving the examples of like phishing emails or just calling somebody and getting them to hand over some password or something. This is not so much a technical problem that more fancy algorithms and quantum computers and all that could beat, but it's targeting and hitting the human that are on the different edges of the computer-mediated communication. And by acquiring the access rights or whatever that would allow them to securely steal the server, basically a hack would be you take this orange line from this person and now you could use the orange line yourself. Viotta says the greatest focus on security back then and still now is, quote, is the message received exactly the same as was sent. So less about a third-party reading and more about them modifying it. Most people don't care about Google reading their email as long as they know nothing is being modified, right? So I think, yeah, effectively for a lot of people, security now, for especially like business applications, things like that, people just want to make sure that, you know, the orange lines and the black box here is intact, such that the message that red person wants to send to blue person successfully goes through. Viotta says, shoulder surfing is the computer security term used for someone at your computer behind you. Related to the shoulder surfing, I just want to share a funny anecdote. When I was in, I think this was in middle school, something that people did was like somebody would be eating pizza and then somebody would come up behind their shoulder and then just like take a bite of the pizza. and they called this biting. And there was a bunch of people at school who did this for a while. Would like literally go over someone's shoulder and take a bite of the pizza. Probably not very sanitary, not recommended, but I just thought that was funny. Anyways, computer-mediated communication. Oftentimes people are just caring about this channel being secured. But if you believe that this party here is not in your best interest, so let's suppose, for example, even if they do deliver your messages unchanged, but what they're doing is they're building up a record and trying to like make an incriminating case against you, or collecting your data so they could make a deep fake of you, or, you know, all these different numbers of things. It's not like they're just doing the job of delivering the messages and then they're deleting the message. Rather, they're doing something else too here, you know, collecting metadata and selling it to ads or whatever. And that's, I would say, practically some of the issues that a lot of people are starting to become bothered about. They only want this black box and these orange lines to do a minimal function, but instead they're doing much, much more that people didn't ask for. And for this reason, like, I'll bring up an example of a service that's rather popular nowadays called the Signal app. Now, a lot of people are choosing to use the Signal app because they, you know, think with the technology that's being used with Signal that there's going to be less funny business and more just secure encrypted communication, but without spooky boys and the keys. So let's just look at this really quick and see if we think we like Signal. Signal is a cross-platform centralized encrypted instant message service. So centralized meaning it's probably got that black box somewhere. Developed by the nonprofit Signal Technology Foundation and Signal Messenger LLC. Users can send one-to-one and group messages, which can include files, voice notes, images, and videos. Okay, so you could communicate in a variety of ways. Let's see how it works. Architecture. So they got their own protocol that uses a bunch of encryption stuff. I want a picture. Reaper says, Alan, are you a supporter of Edward Snowden? Do you think Snowden should have been prosecuted? And Reaper says, Signal requires your telephone number. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. I'm trying to see, like, is Signal actually more privacy better? Like, is there some sort of guarantee about what's happening in the central server? Or is Signal kind of, is it pretty spooky? Okay, I'll probably look at this after the stream. I'm not prepared to do a study of Signal as I have not read this. Regarding Snowden, I would say, dude, I'm not going to make a judgment call on Snowden, but he doesn't look completely trustworthy to me. He looks pretty sneaky. So it's like Snowden and Joe Rogan. Like, he looks like he's trying very hard to convince me of things. So here's Edward Snowden.
Unless you're talking about the existence of the intelligence community itself, which is...
Now to come to think of it, like, I'm wearing glasses that look a lot like Edward. I'm being myself quite Edward Snowden styled here. So that's funny.
These people to not talk ever to journalists, or this, that, or the other. But when you look back at the 9/11 report, and when you look back at the history of what actually happened, what we can prove, right? Not what we can speculate on, but what are at least the commonly agreed facts. It's very clear to me, as someone who worked in the intelligence community, not during this period, of course, I was too young, but very shortly thereafter, that these attacks could have been prevented. And in fact, the government says this too. But the government goes, the reason that these attacks happened, the reason that they weren't prevented, is what they call stovepiping, right? There was not enough.
Reaper says, are you saying Snowden is a Fed? He's definitely, I mean, no question he's Fed adjacent. Like, by definition of his whole drama and story that's come out, he's definitely a Fed adjacent. To what capacity, I would say that he himself is a Fed. I don't know enough to say, but definitely a Fed adjacent. Fed adjacent meaning he's not too many steps away from this black box here. Okay. So maybe Snowden and what he has to say, that's something else to look at later. All right. So, yeah, that about does it for what I have with this topic. Computer mediated communication. My kind of clickbait title was Math and Feds Between You and Your Friends. But I think that is actually quite literally what is going on. You got the math and you got the feds between you and your friends. And oftentimes, the feds, the devices are just there to monitor things. That doesn't mean somebody who's watching your communications 24/7, but is the machinery there such that if somebody wanted to, or they requested access, or they wanted to like insta tap you, could they do it? And I think that in short the answer is yes. So oftentimes what we're doing when we choose technology is we're choosing who this third party is. So I'll just give an example. A lot of people might say, oh yeah, Apple is more secure than Android, something like that, because people look and say that Apple has a history of being less cooperative with governments and stuff, letting people look in their black box. This is a whole nother topic to look at Apple Corporation specifically. But the perception of Apple being more secure is, yes, I know that Apple has all my data and all, their Apple Cloud and stuff, but I believe that the Apple Cloud is actually defending my privacy, and this thing is locked down more than, say, like Google's. So saying, I trust Apple more than Google. And, I think that there are, like, fine reasons to say Apple and Google aren't exactly the same. There's differences between Apple, Google, the people that work for these places, and it would be completely reasonable to me if somebody said, like, I trust Apple way more than Google, and I'm only going to use Apple products even if I have to pay more, because Google had this and this incident, so I think they're more spooky or something. But as long as you know that you're having to trust Apple, you don't have any illusions that this guy isn't part of the equation. Okay, Reaper says, all your talk of security, most people in a few years will just see as the domain of the police. Do you agree? Yeah, so I think law enforcement now, we already have talk about, can law enforcement get the keys to look in this box? So with the digital communication stuff, you have, people guaranteed interface here. Now, if this person is suspected of the crime, Does black box here, organization, decentralized autonomous organization, whatever it is, do they have an obligation to, reveal certain information? Do they have an obligation to store information? I think all of those are legitimate questions. Because law enforcement, right, they will want to see evidence and stuff if there is a question about if some crime occurred or how it occurred and so on. Ripper says, rowdy bar that needs to wake up and get regulated. Yes, they need to get a license. Oh, before that, Reaper said, also thoughts on, in China, the local police will routinely deal with if you say the wrong thing on social media. Do you think that would make trolls stop harassing people? Is the internet just a rowdy bar that needs to wake up and get regulated? Yeah, so my personal view on a lot of internet stuff is I'm not going to be the type of person who talks about, freedom and rights and all these things. I think that you could talk about how these are things that you want, but there's no right to them, You could be like, oh yeah, the internet, we have a right to internet freedom. My own view is no, you don't. The internet has always been like the realm of like feds and academics experimenting on you and all these things. So while there might be, some legal things that claim these things, I personally do not really think that you have rights on the internet and that governments and stuff could just do to you all sorts of stuff. And even if it is an injustice, just because something is an injustice doesn't mean that parties and people won't follow through and do injustices. So I think that practically speaking, just don't expect your rights to be upheld is basically what I'm saying. Like, we have rights, this concept, but I think that in practice, while rights might be respected most of the time, I don't think that like talking about your rights or something isn't like a rule about how the world operates. Rather, you could expect injustice and the stepping on of your rights. Ripper says, Facebook, Google, and Apple are all in California. Is there something about Californian companies and privacy we should know? Yeah, well, so talking about where a lot of information and stuff is concentrated, I think certainly California is where a lot of that is. If I go, internet, was looking for an internet connectivity map the other day. And, actually, let's just look at internet data center map. Oh no, this might get me on a watch list. They'll think that, oh, Alan's a Chinese hacker. He's looking at where are the vulnerable sites of the data centers. Anyways, I think it goes without saying that you're going to have certain central network hubs where there's both a lot of data processing and also connections. So all over, of course, the Valley, the Silicon Valley, towards Los Angeles and California, some other places. And this is just like airplanes, mind you, right? Like with airplanes, there's certain places that you would say are like hubs to switch planes to, transfer flights, whatever. In the same way, we could look at information technology infrastructure and how likewise there's hubs and things for how stuff goes. All right. Rupert says, might mention Fourth Amendment is supposed to prevent random searches. No, I'm not gonna mention any of that Constitution stuff if there's no power behind me mentioning it. What are you gonna say? Like, oh, I didn't know about that. Okay, I won't do it anymore. No, they're not gonna do that. Come on, give me a break. Reaver says, but my freedoms. Indeed. One must not inhale the hopium and just say, oh yeah, well, because the Constitution, it's like, well, then people don't interpret the Constitution how you would like them to do it. So what are you going to do about it? me personally, I think, as I'm not positioned, I don't have like a law degree. I'm not being consulted as a constitutional scholar and all that. So for me to do kind of armchair research on, oh yeah, but we need to defend this right and such in the Constitution, I don't think that sort of lawyering is a very useful or practical way for me to try to do anything. Instead, it's more valuable for me to draw pictures on Microsoft Paint and explain in plain language and easy to understand pictures the nature of the systems that we have, and to understand what sort of risks or implications there are with engaging in these systems, and then making day-to-day choices about which systems I do and do not choose to use, and also for the systems I do use, for what sort of activities I use them, and so on and so forth. But my analysis of this is not to say, oh yeah, and we know that we can trust these people because we have, the Constitution, and they're going to respect the Come on, get real. That's not how this country works. Speaking to Americans, I'm being an American exceptionalist. All right. Okay, let's get into some articles that you all sent me. So I think it was Reaper who had sent me an article or two on Web 3. Let's talk about Web 3. And this is relevant because if we're looking at how the internet is changing, this is a kind of Web 2 picture, okay? Web 2, so social media, all these things. So-called dynamic website means this person updates information in this black box, and then this person could access and see the updated version. So it's not even this person directly sending a message to this person. Rather, some kind of system is centralized here such that people are interfacing with this internet here. And even if they aren't in real time talking with one another, like with a live stream or a phone call, they're somehow able to communicate mediated by this thing. So that would be the dynamic web, Web 2. Let's look at what Web 3 is about. So Web 3. Oh wait, so the Web 3 wants you to trust less. I wanted to go to what is the Web 3? Or was this the same article? Am I confused? All right, my links seem to be messed up. What is the Web 3? Let's find this, because it looks like I lost my link. What is the Web 3 anyways? Did they like change the title of the story? Okay, look, this is interesting. Guys, we're doing some interwebs forensics. I just want to show you, like, I'm not... Okay, look at this. Real-time internet forensics. So these were actually the same article. In my notes, I was thinking I had two articles. One of them called "What is the Web 3 Anyway?" And you could see here up in the title for the tab, it's saying "What is the Web 3 anyways?" So I thought I had two articles to review here. One of them saying "What is the Web 3 anyway?" to just kind of give a definition and talk about the Web 3 using a definition from that article. And then I thought I had another article called "The Father of Web 3 Wants You to Trust Less." But internet forensics, look at this. What is Web 3 anyway is probably the title of the document on their server. Then they went ahead and they did some editing stuff, and that is why you have "The Father of Web 3 Wants You to Trust Less" here as the displayed title. So this is actually a very good example of saying, when you have computer mediated communication like this, let's say you give your friend a link Now it's a link to a resource that's held in this black box. So I might think I send you one thing, and then they actually change the web page, they change the resource in here by the time your friend reads it. So the dynamic internet might mean you think you send your friend one thing because you send a link, but because they change the resource in the server here, then it's your friend actually gets a different message. So here we have a perfect example of this, where I thought I was actually looking at 2 articles on the Web3 because I started working on my notes for the show yesterday, and then I was working on them a little bit this morning. But it's likely that they actually changed the title for this resource here. And by the way, another thing that people could do on the interwebs is, you know, if you know some web programming stuff and you want to make like a fake screenshot, you could do this. You could, so I'm just in my browser, I'm not hacking their website or anything. I'm just on the browser modifying what gets displayed on my computer. So here, did I just hack Wired and say how to make a fake screenshot? No, I didn't. I just went into the browser tools and edited some text like this. So if you just see someone say like, oh yeah, I took a screenshot of this, does that actually guarantee anything? This is another thing that's super tricky about internet and talking about, you know, disinformation and what sort of spooky stuff could go on here. What I did the equivalent of was just modifying, like at the tip of this little orange thing, the sort of information that gets displayed to me, the user, at the end. So here it says like how to make a fake screenshot. I just edited the text. Now if I just refresh this, it'll just go back to the normal title. But that is to say that, you know, when we're talking about the sort of evidence that people might have, just by the nature of it, you know, it's dynamic text. So let's just show another. We could just do this. We could have fun. All right. So Gavin Wood, a fan of Alan Stream, who coined the term Web3 in 2014, believes decentralized technologies are the only hope of preserving liberal democracy. All right, let's take a look. Do you ever find yourself wondering what is Web3? You're not alone. The idea is having a moment, whether you're measuring by VC funding, lobbying blitzes, or incomprehensible corporate announcements, but it can be hard to tell what all the hype is about. Viata says, which is why it's required, for example, in papers to include the date you access the site and the web link, so people don't change it for a fake screenshot. Yeah, so Viata, responding to what you're saying here, though, about, so for example, like I modified this here just for fun, right? I could take a screenshot of this and then the date I access the site and the website link, and I could have the date I accessed it, but I just modified it locally. But it still displays, you know, this URL. So that's just to say that, you know, this is a very crude way to try to, like, you know, forge or whatever you want to call it. But this is showing, right, in terms of quickly convincing someone of something, you could easily do, you know, social engineering if you're kind of tricky and doing up to tricks like that. So, of course, on Alan Stream, we do not suggest you do these things. We only showed this for demonstration purposes. The best policy is just, you know, speak truthfully, simply, be straightforward. No layers and layers and layers of complication. Do not spin a web of lies for yourself to get lost in. Just be straight and transparent. But I do bring up stuff like showing how you could do stuff like this. very easily, just to show that, if you had people that wanted to manipulate public discourse or, do all sorts of stuff, it's not, if you're willing to do bad things, it's not hard to do bad things. I'll put it that way. Okay. Quote, to believers, Web3 represents the next phase of the internet and perhaps of organizing society. All right, that's big. Web 1.0, the story goes, was the era of decentralized open protocols in which most online activity involved navigating to individual static web pages. So static web page means the documents that are in here, they basically just stay the same. They're static. The people here don't update or change those. Web 2.0, which we're living through now, is the era of centralization, in which a huge share of communication and commerce takes place on closed platforms owned by a handful of super powerful corporations. Think Google, Facebook, Amazon, subject to the nominal control of central government regulators. Web 3 is supposed to break the world free of that monopolistic control. So here, Web 2.0, this box might be Apple or Google or whoever, and then the governments might have the keys to that. All of this is rather opaque, not super known, the exact structure of this. But, it's not your computer, we'll put it that way. So let's hear about what Web 3 is about. So at the most basic level, Web 3 refers to a decentralized online ecosystem based on the blockchain. Platforms and apps built on Web 3 won't be owned by a central gatekeeper, but rather the users who earn ownership stake by helping to develop and maintain those services. So Gavin Wood coined the term Web 3, originally Web 3.0 in 2014. At the time, he was fresh off of helping develop Ethereum, the cryptocurrency that is second only to Bitcoin in prominence and market size. Today he runs the Web3 Foundation, which supports decentralized technology projects as well as parity technologies, a company focused on building blockchain infrastructure for Web3. Wood, who is based in Switzerland, spoke with me last week over video about where Web 2.0 went wrong, his vision for the future, and so on and so forth. So if we could actually get more of a illustration of what Web 3 looks like, then that could be cool. I'll just say generally. So if we think of this as kind of Web 2.0, if Web 3.0 is like, oh yeah, the various people, they're all building and maintaining this thing together, how do you subvert such a system? Well, if it's kind of democratic and decentralized, then if you just have more, bots or people on your team that basically end up voting, controlling, and making all the decisions, it's just like instead of having a central castle block thing here, you're fighting against an amorphous blob of black goo. I don't know if there's a better way to put that than the amorphous black goo, but let us look at some images of the decentralized, let's search decentralized Web 3.0 and see how people illustrate this. So this picture is like everybody is all working on this network together. But what if all three of these are like, bots or like government agents? Then you're actually not more empowered. Instead of having like a central block where the power is concentrated, instead you're surrounded by black goo. Here's the thing from NPR. People are talking about Web 3. Is the internet of the future or just a buzzword? All right, let's see if NPR paywalls me. This is pretty recent, November 21st, 2021. Summary of this. Web 3 is about grabbing some of the power back. There's a small group of companies that own all this stuff, and then there's us who use it. And despite the fact that we contribute to the success of these platforms, we don't have anything to show for it, says artist person. So how do we have social networks, search engines, and marketplaces with no company overlords? Imagine it as a kind of bookkeeping where many computers at once host data that's searchable by anyone. It's operated by users collectively rather than a corporation. People are given tokens for participating. Now, just practically from our perspectives, if there's tokens for participating, and then governments, NGOs, corporations, whatever, could hire people to full-time interact with these systems and control the majority of the tokens, then what does that mean? Does this decentralized system empower you more? Or is it rather that, the usual suspects are more in control, it's just a different structure, and now you can't point at and say like Google, Apple, Facebook, because it's more of this amorphous black goo of information, using this symbolically. Let's actually search that. Let's get some dramatic images. Black goo internet. So the amorphous black goo that's targeting you. Oh, it's an official it's an official theory. Okay, and then people are talking about how this thing might manifest with nanobots and stuff. We won't get into that. But just to say that a lot of this decentralized stuff, I think, is promising a kind of freedom to people under the guise of like it's being more democratic, free and equal access. But what free and equal access means is like, let's just talk briefly about how would you rate popularity on Twitter. If you're rating popularity on Twitter based on the number of like likes and reshares, and then somebody is willing to use like bot tactics such that every one of their tweets has at least 100 likes and reshares, who has a stronger voice in that? Obviously, the person who's able and willing to sort of game that system in order to manufacture the appearance of popularity, their voice will be amplified, versus if somebody is just using the platform normally, then they are kind of going to be at the bottom. Now, just here, Alan's stream will make a meta comment here. I don't think that that's a bad thing. Like, I don't have that many viewers and subscribers here on YouTube yet. Maybe one day I will. However, I continue to do this to use YouTube because YouTube as a service does exactly what I need it to do. I could stream, I could upload videos here, and then if I want somebody to see what I've been thinking about or writing about, then I could easily share it. So I don't have any complaints about that aspect of YouTube's service. Now, how might I get like offended or whatever if I was like expecting YouTube to somehow fairly reward me or something? Then there's a lot of reasons to be upset or frustrated with YouTube or Google or whatever. But if you don't even have those expectations, then hey, I'm saying this service it works fine, and I'll continue to use it so long as they don't straight kick me off the platform. But to me, it sounds like with this Web3, this decentralization stuff, it sounds like they're trying to draw a lot of people in to become enthusiastic, to embrace these technologies, thinking that it will somehow be a more free system. Whereas my own view is that similar to how does democracy give you more representation? No, it doesn't. Don't be silly. Okay, democracy as a mechanism basically just means that whoever is willing to manipulate people's passions, to excite people, to get people riled up, to be a rabble rouser, a populist like Orange Man, then that sort of person or party, it doesn't even have to be a person, is able to succeed and push their interests through a democracy. But is a democracy the best way, to protect individual autonomy and stuff like that? I would say no. The answer is no. Okay. So I think that about does it for the topics from the UL. It turned out that that was just one article I had, not two. So we had some fun with some internet forensics, and then I just got one news story that we could look at really quick, which is fun. I want to bring up too this term. Reaper shared this word with me. He called Silicon Valley Silly Valley. I thought that was kind of funny. So yes, we could refer to them as the silly Valley futurists and their ideas for our future. All right. The Verge. Alexa is nagging you more because Amazon knows you don't care about its new features. Alexa can do more than set timers, but do users care? And then this article talks about some interesting stats about how widespread some of these things are. So in 2020, Amazon determined that 25% of U.S. households have at least one Alexa device, with this rising to 27% for Amazon Prime customers. So about 1 in 4 people got their smart home light going. Then a lot of people will buy Alexa devices around Christmas. Let's see, per Bloomberg, Amazon found in some years that 15% to 25% of new Alexa devices are no longer active by the second week of use. But still, that would be to imply that 75% of the Alexa devices continue to be used by people. So that's actually quite a lot of uptake. Last year, Amazon concluded that the market for smart speakers had passed its growth phase and estimated it would only expand 1.2% annually in the future. 2018, Amazon projected that it would lose $5 on average per Alexa device sold, and so on and so forth. Alexa devices with screens are used more. So, why do I bring up this article? Just to understand about what are some of the on-the-ground changes that are happening. To me, it seems like smart speakers specifically, it's not like smart speakers is the one thing and then it's done once everyone has a smart speaker. Smart speakers are not the new smartphone. I'll put it that way. Like smartphones, clearly you could see them everywhere. They become a very important thing in society, similar to how in the past you could maybe say similar things about automobiles for some places. And perhaps the number one reason is you have a lot of people that carry around their smartphones everywhere and do all sorts of stuff to it. On the other hand, like a smart speaker or something, it's going to probably stay in one location. It's not going to do much. So to me, even if these things, they become less popular, they kind of reach their point of growth, I'm sure Amazon harvested a wealth of information from its customer data and how people use things, how people interact with things. And I'm also aware, too, that these things, a lot of the ways you interact with them would be like by a phone. Like I think you would program them by a phone. You can even look at program Alexa phone, and there's probably like an app. Or you could, so that's about programming them to make calls. If I just search, let's try this. Yeah, so it will be like an interface device, and then they have some kind of cloud-based service, and you could go onto a desktop or a smartphone, and then these are quite affordable products. Like they're saying how Amazon actually has a loss. They lose an average of $5 for every Alexa device sold. Yet it's worth it for Amazon to do this because if they're able to sell at a lower price and get widespread adoption of their products, then that will mean that you have more and more people that are in their pipeline. And before you know it, we have smart microwaves and coffee makers and so on and so forth. There's a pipeline. They want you to get used to this platform of the Internet of Things, where these smart speakers are one of the maybe early devices in which people might get used to interacting with a smart home. So on one hand, we might have signals that people don't really care about using a smart speaker specifically in more than one way. But in my opinion, that actually does not matter. It's not like, oh yeah, so now Amazon's done with smart technology for the home. Instead, I say, yeah, for our particular product line, that's slowing down. However, maybe then there's a lot more. Like Amazon learned the lessons that they had. Maybe they found, like, here it's a picture of a clock that's saying, all right, so actually if we have a kind of like smart clock radio, people would actually really like that. It displays maybe the time and the weather and something like that. We know that people will use that every day, but to set events and stuff, people don't like to do that by voice. Maybe people would rather have like a drag and drop interface, like Google Calendar. Maybe that's easier for people to use. So I read an article like this. Of course, there was some interesting stats information here. But I see this and saying, all right, I don't think these Amazon cloud-based Internet of Things services are going to go away anytime soon. And me personally, I was actually say a little bit surprised at how popular they are, because self-selecting, the sorts of people I know and I talk to, that they generally wouldn't like this sort of stuff. But I have been to people's homes and stuff that do have these things, and very quickly people become familiar with things they see or interact with every day. So that's that. All right, Reaper says, with response to democracy, you're saying if someone convinces people to vote for them, that's not democracy. No, I'm saying democracy sucks. I'm not saying that that's not democracy. I'm saying that the nature of democracy is that people are ruled by their passions, and the methods by which you convince people and get people in the numbers are often insidious methods that are not befitting of a free society. A free, independent, virtuous people that are striving to be better themselves and to thereby make the world a more orderly, better place by starting with themselves and their own households. I'm saying that democracy often encourages appealing to more base instincts, thereby the political mechanisms themselves undermine the free populace. So with that dramatic note, let us end the stream. Thank you all for stopping in today. We'll probably take a little break from Alan's stream, but I will announce when we have the next stream. And I thank you all for showing up. Like, subscribe, do all that YouTube stuff. And until next time.